Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate. Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namani Gaura Namaha. Happy New Year, everyone. This is the beginning of the new year, day one for followers of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. We celebrate Lord Chaitanya because he's Krishna giving what Krishna doesn't give. Now, you might say, is there something that Krishna doesn't do or cannot do? Krishna is Lord Chaitanya, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And Krishna as Sri Krishna Chaitanya gives what not even other avatars or other incarnations of Godhead can give. That is spontaneous, pure love, as demonstrated by the residents of Vrindavan. You see, as Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami explains in Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, Krishna appeared at the end of the Dwapara Yuga, before the present Kali Yuga. And he demonstrated his pastimes, particularly in the four rasas: neutrality, shantaras, servitude, dasyaras, friendship, sakyaras, parental love, vatsalyaras, and of course, madhurya, the intimate love that seems to resemble earthly romantic affairs. Krishna demonstrated all this to attract the conditioned souls. Because what are we doing in material life, in our material consciousness? We want those rasas, but we want them in our capacity to be Rasaraj, the master of the rasas. I'm serving so many others, even when we know it or not, we're always serving others. This is our perverted equivalent of dasaras. And as I point out sometimes, you may note the way the material world works. As soon as you try to enjoy, immediately you are a servant of someone or something. Just think about in your life, when you tried to set yourself up, shall we say, when you tried to accumulate resources, when you tried to, in some way, dominate material nature, even in a nice, well-mannered way, you were the servant in some way or another. That's the way this material world is set up. You cannot avoid being a servant at any moment. So the bhakti yogi, the Krishna conscious person, analyzes. How do you develop this power of analysis? By listening to authorized sources, thinking about it, deliberating upon it. This is the real way of sadhu sangha, not so much physical association. I'm in the same room or I'm in the same auditorium as the saintly person, so therefore I'm associating. Not exactly. For the full potency of association, because you may wonder how to get that. Because as Chaitanya Charitamrita says, just a fraction of a second of association with a saintly person can give you the perfection of life. So what's that association like? In its most potent form, and I'm sure that you want the most potent form of sadhu sangha, in its most potent form, you're hearing the analyses of the sadhu, you're thinking about it, turning it this way, turning it that way, and you're seeking to apply what you heard in your life. That is real association, real sadhu sangha. So here we are in material existence, and we're trying to establish ourselves and maintain ourselves and increase ourselves as the enjoyer of rasas. And then we wonder, well, where is Krishna? How does Krishna figure into all this? If anything, we think Krishna should help us in our plans to be Rasaraj. He should give support. He should iron out any difficulties. In other words, Krishna should be our servant. Real bhakti is far above this. Real bhakti means at every moment we're yearning, how can I render service to Krishna? I don't want him to be my servant. Then again, when you have Krishna's trust, when he sees that you're not trying to turn him into your order supplier, he lovingly becomes your servant. So there's competition between who can serve each other the most, Krishna and the devotee. But that is at the highest stage of bhakti. And we should know what real bhakti is so we can aspire. Don't think that just because something is high that you should never know about it or never think about it. You have to have the right goal. And the goal that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has given us is Premat Pamarto Mahan. The ultimate goal of life is love of Krishna. So you have to begin somewhere. Just like I was speaking to one couple in India recently, and they were newly married, just 2 months. So, of course, bear in mind, we're talking about a much more traditional setting than the Wild West. So I asked the newlywed wife, so what is your program? What's your plan? And she gave the traditional answer, which most ladies in New Zealand would run out the room if they heard it. She said, oh, I plan to serve my husband. And I asked, are you working now? And she replied, oh, no, the baby. In other words, they've only been married 2 months, but already she's got in mind what the program is, the goal. To a Western audience, of course, this sounds quite primitive. But the point is, anyone in this world has a goal. The question is, what is the goal? So just like this young newly married devotee was only married 2 months, but already she's thinking, I'm not going to work. I'm going to stay at home and prepare for the child. Similarly, our devotees, we want to prepare for achieving our goal. So therefore, the talks about what Mahaprabhu is giving us are so important, because he's giving the ultimate goal of life to those who have no qualification. Usually, you think that to get something, you need some qualification. To get a certain job, to get a certain award. But here you have Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu giving away the most precious gift during the worst possible times. The contradiction, the paradox should overwhelm you if you truly understand how degraded times are now. Not just recently, by the way, but this is Kali Yuga, and we're only about 5,000 years into Kali Yuga. So it's not that all of a sudden governments have become overbearing, people have become polarized and absorbed in disagreements. It may seem like that is so more now than ever, but it's always been going on. But yet, amidst all this confusion and delusion, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is giving the rarest gift. He's giving something that the other avatars don't give. Now, let's clarify one point. It's not that the other avatars, besides Krishna and Lord Chaitanya, are deficient. No, as Lord Brahma explains in the Brahma Samhita, there are so many candles that are lit, but you give special focus to the original candle that you use to light all the successive candles, but all the candles are equal in power. Now let's unpack that. All the incarnations, expansions of Krishna are equal in power, but they don't show it. They don't show the fullness that Krishna does. In Krishna, you have the full display of the qualities and attributes of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The intimacy, the relationships, the reciprocation. So, as we pointed out before, Rupa Goswami explains in Sri Laghu Bhagavatamrita that, yes, there are so many incarnations. Someone needs to be muted. Thank you. Rupa Goswami points out that there are so many incarnations of Godhead. And he's actually quoting Bilvamangala Thakur. But only Krishna can stimulate the full range of ecstatic love. So what are the two examples given? Some of you may know who've read Sri Laghu Bhagavatamrita, advanced text for those who have read many times Srila Prabhupada's books. The examples given are when Ramchandra, during Ram Leela, was exiled to the forest. All the trees and plants and creepers began to weep. Due to the impending separation. This happened one time. But the acharyas point out that every day in Krishna Lila, in Braj, when Krishna enters the forest, the creepers, the trees, the plants tremble in ecstasy, showering their various attributes, fruits and honey, and every day they're overwhelmed with trembling ecstasy, not simply in separation, as in Ram Lila, that occasion that happened one time in Ram Lila, but every day, even though Krishna is right around them. Whereas the example in Ram Lila is that the plants and creepers in the forest, Dandakaranya forest, were feeling the impending separation. But here in Braj, Krishna's there every day. So it's not just a one-off affair. So this is given as Shastric proof that when it comes to demonstrating the full range of ecstatic, intimate love, no other incarnation can compare to Krishna. So Krishna certainly demonstrated in his Leela when he manifests his pastimes on earth 5,000 years ago. But you should remember that Krishna's pastimes are always going on uppercut, unmanifest, in the topmost portion of the spiritual world. But once every day of Brahma, he makes those pastimes manifest, meaning he makes it so you can see. But you must bear in mind that although you can see, you may not understand what's right in front of your eyes, as was the case the majority of the time when Krishna demonstrated his Leela in the manifest pastimes. People didn't know what they were looking at. They couldn't place it. They couldn't compute, although it's right in front of their eyes. So Krishna is demonstrating the pinnacle of reciprocation, loving reciprocation. And that's the story of our life. We want loving reciprocation. We want to be, as I said, the Rasaraj. we want to have our mandala, our circle of loving relationships. And then we feel life is worthwhile, life has meaning. And we're willing to work so hard just for that experience of having our mandala, our circle, our ring of loving associates. The more, the better. And just think, we want all the rasas. We want to serve others when we feel like serving others. We want to be friendly. We want to have friendships. And yes, even in this age of Kali, where families that stay intact are so rare, still we'd like nice, loving relationships with mother and father. And of course, everyone wants the most steady and intense romantic experiences that endure the whole life and get newer and newer and fresher at every moment. We really put a lot of demands on the material energy and on others. So my point again, we want to be the Rasaraj. But Krishna comes and shows, here's the real thing. You can be a part of this. You may note that the acharyas don't so much pay attention to the fifth rasa, the beginning rasa of Shantaras, neutrality, because it's all about awe and reverence. in Shantaras. There's no active service. There's no stirring of reciprocation. It's just, oh, how great is God? That's something. And you see remnants of that, shades of that in the world's religions. I remember songs I was taught in Sunday school. Who made the mountains? Who made the seas? Somebody bigger than you or me. Or thus sings my soul, my Savior God to thee. How great thou art, how great thou art. So this is a shade of Shanta Bhakti, awe and reverence because of the majesty of the Creator. But Bhakti goes far beyond that in its more fuller expressions. It goes far beyond those very beginning, or shall we say, nursery school exhibitions, which are nice and certainly beneficial, but there's so much more to be had. And to understand that there's so much more to be had, we have to understand Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So Krishna demonstrated the rasas, the spontaneous love of the residents of Vrindavan. After Krishna's disappearance from the ordinary vision, Chaitanya Charitamrita explains that Krishna is deliberating, contemplating. I've demonstrated, but I haven't given. And there's so much misunderstanding. For example, in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna very clearly says, offer everything to him, surrender to him, think of him. But still, the acharyas point out, Krishna noted that there's misunderstanding, especially by the Mayavadis, the impersonalists. Oh, surrender to me? That verse in Bhagavad Gita? Yeah, surrender to me. That my inner self, that's the everything, be revealed. Because actually, there's no separate me. There's no individuality. There's simply Brahman. So when Krishna says, surrender to me, always think of me, he's not talking about himself as a distinct individual that eternally exists. He's talking about I am he and we are she and we are all it and it is all us. Of course, this is a gross distortion of Bhagavad Gita, but this is what's going on. And you have remnants of that in today's me-centered culture. What's it all about? Me. What do I want? How do I feel about this? What are you doing for me? You did something last year, good for me. Good on you. But that was last year. What are you doing for me now? It's all about me. And the more you can enhance my world, the more you can stimulate and entertain my world, then you're all right. That's the standard today, which derives from Mayavad concoctions, derives from impersonalism. So Krishna noted that I spoke Bhagavad Gita, but there's all this misunderstanding. Persons are confusing themselves to be the me. They don't understand that there is the predominator and the predominated. Krishna is the maintainer of all living entities. Those of you who listen regularly to Prabhupada's lectures know a verse that he always quoted, Nityo Nityanam, Chaitanas Chaitananam, Eko Bahunam Yo Vidadati Kaman. Of all the eternal living entities, there's one supreme eternal living entity. Of all the conscious living entities, there's one supreme conscious living entity. And what is one way you can know the difference? The one, the supreme one, is maintaining all the others. So who can say, what ordinary living entity can say that he or she is maintaining all the others? So how is Krishna going to clear up this misunderstanding of even his own words? He comes as Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to not simply demonstrate, as Krishna did, pastimes, but to give, to distribute to the most undeserving persons. And he's distributing the most precious wealth, which is spontaneous love of Krishna, Braja Prem, love of Krishna as demonstrated by the residents of Vrindavan. Mahaprabhu in this most degraded time is not just giving love of God in awe and reverence or official love of God. There's mention of that official love of God in all the world's religions. Love God, love your neighbor, don't sin. But Mahaprabhu is giving far beyond that. He's giving pure love of Krishna in that the love is not dependent on knowledge of Krishna's opulences, powers, or that he's the creator or he's the maintainer. Just love for love's sake. Just think about it. Wouldn't you like something like that in your role as imitation Rasaraj? Someone loves me just for love's sake. Generally, the ladies will readily admit it, and the men will try to pretend they're not. No, they're far beyond that. But no, everyone wants exquisite love, not someone who loves you just because you have some wealth or because you have some particular athletic abilities or musical abilities. But oh, you feel so flattered, so enlivened if someone's just loved you for the sake of loving you. Oh, but you're part of Krishna. You're feeling that way because as Krishna's tiny part, you share in the qualities of Krishna, but in such a minute way. So Krishna wants to distribute love of himself. And he does that as Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He drowns the whole world with the opportunity for the highest, to attain the highest gift. We have a point at the end of our session. We're going to have to end at 6:45 today, New Zealand time, because I have to go to the temple and then be there for RT 7 to 7:30 and a short talk from 7:30 to 8 p.m. Some of you may have the link for the class at 7:30. So, but for this audience, there are some older devotees present, and I'll save 5 minutes at the end for presenting some exquisite, delicious information for older devotees who are able to avail themselves of such information about Lord Chaitanya, Lord Nityananda, Srimati Radharani. But let us focus now on Lord Chaitanya, who's Krishna, breaking all of Krishna's rules. We've explained this many times about how in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna is very strict. In fact, Krishna tells Arjuna at the end, don't tell these bhakti secrets to anyone who's not austere or to anyone who's envious of me. Well, that means Practically none of us in the audience today should be hearing Bhagavad Gita. But that same Krishna comes as Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and distributes love of Krishna to persons who know nothing about Krishna. And I've explained before how this is such a stunning point that in explaining it, I've seen sitting in front of Srila Prabhupada, I saw him break out into ecstatic symptoms 1.5 minutes into his lecture. And he had to leave class because he was overwhelmed by ecstatic symptoms, explaining how Krishna as Lord Chaitanya, even though no one knows Krishna, is distributing love of Krishna. And you know the question I often raise: how can you love someone? How can you taste love of someone that you don't know? This is the mystery of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Some of you may have heard earlier this week, I was having a dialogue online with my godbrother Pancharatna Das, whom I know since 1972 in New York. We were discussing Vasudev Dutt, the dear associate of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who, upon being glorified by Lord Chaitanya was saying farewell to his devotees from Navadvip. They were leaving Jagannath Puri. And before they departed, Mahaprabhu was glorifying them all as if he had 1,000 mouths. This is the standard of Chaitanya Charitamrita. Sometimes it's said Mahaprabhu is glorifying someone, a devotee, as if he had 5 mouths or 100 mouths or 1,000 mouths. We want to be blessed with that kind of ability. And you develop the desire to do that by hearing about it. So upon his glorification of Vasudev Dutt, what was Vasudev Dutt's response? My Lord, you can do anything you want. So I have a request for you. I want to take all the karmic reactions of all living entities. Let me suffer perpetually in hell. Let them all be freed from material existence. End the bhava roga, the disease of material existence for all living entities in the universe. I'll take all the karmic reactions, the sinful reactions of every living entity in this universe on myself. Let them be free from material existence. I'll suffer perpetually their reactions. You hear that, you wonder, is this for real? Do you actually understand the scope, the magnitude of what he's saying? So in the purport, Srila Prabhupada helps us by pointing out, it's not that Vasudev Dutt is saying you have to believe in him in order that you'll be free from your sinful reactions. He's saying just blanket the whole universe, all living entities, not simply human beings, but all living entities, no matter what kind of body they have in the universe. Let them all not only be freed from sinful reactions, but also be free from material existence. Because you see, if you're just free from sinful reactions, just like so many of the saviors known in the Western religious world, they say, if you believe in me, you won't suffer sinful reactions. But Vasudev Dutt is saying, believe in me or not, that is not the point. He's asking, he's appealing to Mahaprabhu. Let all living entities, no matter what body, no matter what planet in the whole universe, go back to Godhead. Sometimes the point is raised that with awareness that there are other planets in the universe with life. That awareness is increasing more and more. It's not so crackpot as it sounded maybe 30 years ago or so and more. So you consider the well-known saviors of religions that have originated in the Middle East. How would they relate to living entities from other planets? How would they be the savior of living entities from this planet, this dimension, that dimension? And so many religionists say that this could be a problem because we have to understand, is the savior just for the human beings on this planet? Or what's the relation? If indeed it turns out that Bhagavad Gita is right and living entities are everywhere, then who saves them and how? And how do our earthly saviors apply to them? So Vasudeva Dutt is incomparable because he's saying, I don't care whether you believe in me or not. I don't care which planet you're on. I don't care what kind of body you have. I want your sinful reactions so that not only will you be relieved of sinful reactions, but you'll end your material life. You'll get out of material existence. Knowing all this, you can start to slightly understand Mahaprabhu's response. His heart just melted. His body trembled. Tears flowed from his eyes because this proposal by Vasudeva Dutt is unprecedented. And then Lord Chaitanya explained that you don't have to suffer for all these living entities in the universe. It's nothing for Krishna to just let every living entity in a universe go back to Godhead, and that universe is totally emptied out. It's nothing. Just by your desire, Mahaprabhu told Vasudeva, just by your desire it can happen. Krishna exists to fulfill the desires of his pure devotees. So that leads us to one very special point, which Srila Prabhupada elaborates on in the purport. He points out that actually you can say that the material world exists just because of desire. One desire is that the conditioned souls had illicit desires to be the predominator and enjoyer. So therefore, they brought about the existence of the material world. Then again, you could say that the material world exists because of the desire of a devotee, because by a devotee's desire, all living entities in the universe can go back to Godhead. So in that sense, it's up to the devotee. The whole material universe can disappear, as Lord Chaitanya explained, and there'll be no loss for Krishna. If the devotee wants, that's what can happen. And then ultimately, the material world exists because of the desire of Krishna, who can arrange that even the entire material energy is lost, disappears, and Krishna still won't take it as anything more than an insignificant loss, unnoticeable. The entire material energy disappears, not just one universe, but all the countless universes just disappear. It's nothing for Krishna. Just like if, and Mahaprabhu gives this example, someone has a herd of 1,000,000 kamadhenus. You know what a kamadhenu is? A wish-fulfilling cow, a cow that can grant your every desire, your any desire, if you have a herd of millions of such cows. And then along with that herd, you have one she-goat or a he-goat. and that she or he disappears. Do you break down and lament because of it when you've got a million Kamadhenus? So Mahaprabhu points out to Vasudeva that even if not just one universe is emptied out by your desire, but if the whole material energy disappears, it's nothing for Krishna. So this is the scale that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu operates on. Mind blowing, as they say. Do they still use that expression? Or shall we say mind fracturing? So I'll end with some comments from Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur and Srila Prabhupada. From Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, there has not been, there will not be such benefactors of the highest merit as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his devotees. The offer of other benefits is only a deception. It is rather a great harm, whereas the benefit done by him and his followers is the truest and greatest eternal benefit. This benefit is not for one particular country, causing mischief to another, but it benefits the whole universe. Now, for those who are older devotees who've been doing their reading and following their practice diligently, here's something from Teachings of Lord Chaitanya, chapter 17. There is a specific difference between the pure devotee and the confidential devotee. Different potencies of the Lord are engaged in serving the Supreme Lord in different transcendental relationships. They are situated in conjugal love, parental affection, friendship, and servitude. By judging impartially, one can find that the internal potencies of the Supreme Lord who are engaged in conjugal love with the Lord are the best of all devotees. Thus, both internal devotees and confidential devotees are attracted by the conjugal love of the Supreme Absolute Truth. These are the most confidential devotees of Lord Chaitanya. Other pure devotees who are more or less attached to Sri Nityananda Prabhu and Advaita Prabhu are attracted by other transcendental relationships, such as parental affection, friendship, and servitorship. When such devotees are very much attached to the activities of Lord Chaitanya, they at once become confidential devotees in conjugal love with the Supreme Lord. So when such devotees develop great attachment for Mahaprabhu, they too become situated within the intimate circle of devotees in Madhurya Ras. Finally, this is some information from Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. I know this is way over the head of new devotees, but we do have older devotees in the audience. And so we have to run like a one-room classroom here. All the grades in one classroom. We're speaking about Lord Nityananda. Saraswati Thakur Prabhupada writes, but Nityananda does not directly instruct in the confidential service of Krishna. Srimati Radhika is the guru of the inner circle of the servants of Krishna. Srimati Radhika, however, accepts the offer of service of only those souls who are specially favored by Nityananda and are deemed by him to be fit for her service. Therefore, there is a most intimate relationship between the function of Nityananda and that of Srimati Radhika. All right. So now I must venture to the temple, and after Kirtan at 7:30, I'll start again. I think you have the link, those of you who want to listen. Hare Krishna. Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda, Sri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna.